I was struck this morning just by the Lord calling on Martha and her name twice. Martha, Martha. And it, made me think about, I just watched the first episode of The Chosen again, because getting ready for when I'm going to be watching it with all of you, if you choose to, in November. I'll give more information about that coming. But this key of calling on the name of Mary, right? And then we see this at the resurrection when Jesus is not recognized by Mary Magdalene, and then he calls her Mary. And then she recognizes the presence of Christ. That God calls us by name. We are His. And He called Martha by name, saying, with this tender love. I think about also like Juan Diego, when Our Lady appears to him, Our Lady says, Juanito, Juan Dieguito, such love and care that comes from heaven. Sometimes we think of God as, using the first and middle name, right? If only John get in here, you're in trouble. But the tenderness, the tender love of our God. Martha, Martha. Inviting in His love. Pay attention to what I'm about to say. This is important. You're anxious and worried about a great many things, but there's only one thing that's necessary. And what's that one thing that's necessary? Relationship with Jesus. Mary is sitting there listening to His word. Actually, I was listening to a commentary on this, and it says here, she was sitting beside the Lord at His feet, listening to Him speak, but the actual translation would be listening to His word. Of course she's listening to Him speak, but why? For His word. That His word speaking to her heart. And God is speaking to us and saying, let me into your heart. Let me into your heart. I who knew you before you were formed in the womb. We hear in this psalm today. Truly you have formed my inmost being. You knit me in my mother's womb. I give you thanks that I am fearfully, wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. That the psalmist recognizes how God knows us intimately, passionately. Many years ago, I was going through a healing process, and part of that healing process I did was what's called a conception to birth prayer, where you prayerfully go through those moments when you first are conceived, and then you move through, and God sometimes reveals different things about ourselves, and sometimes some trauma that needs to be healed from that, but other things. And I remember in that moment, as the priest was leading me through this prayer, at the moment of conception, I saw in my mind the Lord put a purple stole on me. And so afterwards, as we were sharing and talking about it, he says, not just a stole, meaning the stole, recognizing that from that first moment, God was calling me to be a priest, but a purple stole, and what does that mean? And either it means I'm going to be doing a lot of penance, which hasn't really happened in my life very much, or that call to healing, specifically, whether anointing of the sick or confession and all that in my life. And I look and I say, God knew me then. He knew me then. And He knows you. And He calls you by name and He says, I invite you. Come into intimacy with me. It's so easy to be running around doing this and that and the other thing, having a million things that we have to run and take care of. But He says, but be with me. Be with me. And there are times, of course, that we have to do things. We have busyness in our lives that have to be done, but to do it with Him. To allow Him to be with us. May we allow God to call us by name and to help us remember the one thing necessary.